Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Nancy Jurasinski, and this is our first live library series program that we've done in a year. So bear with us. We're kind of rusty, but we're going to try to, give you all everything that you wanted to see. And we're also being live on the library's Facebook page so that folks who weren't able to register can also view. We are Master Gardeners. The Master Gardeners Library Series is brought to you through the LSU Ag Center in cooperation with the East Baton Rouge Public Libraries. Ag Center out at Baton. If you have any questions about the Master Gardener program, please ask one of us. Carol is the other presenter for this evening. And there will be a slide at the end of my presentation with information on how to contact our ag agent for East Baton Rouge Parish, and he will be the person that you will want to get in touch with if you're interested in becoming a Master Gardener. All right, when you guys registered, you got one of these little evaluation sheets, and we're going to ask that you do take the time to fill that out before you leave, because this is how we learn and how we get better. All of the programs that we schedule are programs that have been suggested by the public. We try to fulfill whatever need the gardening community in East Baton Rouge has at the time. So please do give us that information. We also have the little sheet for questions. Carol and I are both Master Gardeners, but that doesn't mean we have, infinite knowledge of gardening. So if you have a question that one of us can't answer, if you write it down on that little question sheet, we will be sure to get it to somebody who will be able to answer it for you, and they'll either call you or email you, whichever you want, excuse me. If you have questions during the program, like you need clarification on something that I'm going over, then please stop me, ask, and we'll go with that. If you just have general gardening questions, we will have a little break in between my program and Carol's, and we will try to answer those questions for you. Let's see. All right. I think that's all the bookkeeping information that I need to do. My name is Nancy Jurasinski. I've been a Master Gardener since 2015, and basically, growing up, my dad was always in the garden and I was always his helper, so I kind of grew up out in the garden and learning how to take care of plants and landscape and things like that. And then I was a teacher for 36 years, the last 20 of which middle school science teacher. And I always tried to incorporate gardening in some way in my teaching. Always had a garden where when my sons were little, we grew vegetables, we grew okra, we grew tomatoes, bell pepper, we grew whatever they wanted to grow, because I thought it was really important for them to see that connection. And at least one of them is still a gardener, so 1 out of 3, not bad. All right, tonight I'm going to do this little program on herbs for beginners. Hopefully it will give you some information to get you started. I'm going to talk a little bit about growing herbs indoors and growing herbs outdoors so that you'll kind of get the best of both worlds, and hopefully you'll be able to get started on your own. What I'd like to try to make sure that we cover is the growing conditions that work best for herbs, techniques that you can use when you're growing your herbs inside. Here in Louisiana, we are blessed with a long growing season. Some herbs grow better in the fall, some grow better in the spring. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about how to harvest your herbs. And then, as you may have noticed in your handout, I have some recipes that I have used. They're my recipes and things that I enjoy doing in my kitchen with my herbs. Okay? All right. Most important thing at the very, very top, herbs need sunlight, okay? 5 to 6 hours of sunlight is what you want to be sure to give your herbs every day. Now, this does not mean it has to be 5 or 6 hours in a row. My herb garden allows for morning sunlight all summer long, and then as the sun moves across my house, It's in the shade for a little while, and then it gets 2 or 3 hours in the late afternoon. So even if you have, broken hours of sunlight, and of course, if you grow your herbs in containers, you can move them to where it's sunny. So you can just keep your herbs wherever you want. You can keep them on the patio while you're out there enjoying, and then you can move them out into the sunlight, and you get the best of both worlds. You absolutely, positively have to have good drainage. Herbs do not like wet feet. They are not happy. Their roots will rot very quickly. So you are going to have to either grow them in a raised bed or grow them in a container. If you grow them in a container, you're going to want to use a potting soil. You're not going to want to just dig the soil out of your yard, because here in Louisiana, especially in this area, our soil is a lot of clay. You hold it in your hand and it just sticks together. What you want is nice crumbly stuff that the water can drain through. You want to make sure that your soil is rich in organic matter. Now, if you compost, fabulous. Put your compost in your herb garden. But it can also just mean mulch or leaves, or if you've got pine needles, you got a couple of pine trees and your neighbors, or you've got them or your neighbors got them, put the needles in there. Any kind of organic material is good. And don't crowd your herbs. They need good air circulation around them. So when you are looking to grow an herb garden, do your research. Go online, read books. Every library has books on herb gardening. Please do your research. Okay? A couple of years ago, I was seeing all of these wonderful recipes with lemongrass, and I thought, oh, cool, I'll buy some. So I found a little container of lemongrass, and I came home and I planted it, never thinking, duh, it's a grass. And that puppy grew to be about this tall and about this big around, and all my other herbs were going, help! So do your research like I should have done before and plant for the full-grown size of your herb. Realize it's in that little bitty pot. No, it's so small and tiny, and you want to put a bunch of them together so that your garden looks full. But trust me, if you plant them now, and come June, they're going to be crowded and miserable. So do your research. Okay. Herbs like a neutral pH to the soil. So if you are familiar with the soil sample boxes, you can get them at any of the nurseries here in town. If you take a drive out to Baton one weekend to look at the roses or walk the trails, we have some in the conference center at Baton, and there are directions inside for how to dig a sample of soil, put it in a little bag, and mail it to LSU. If you tell LSU what you want to grow, they will send you back a soil analysis and tell you what you need to add to your soil to make sure that you'll get good growth. And you can put, I think, up to 3 soil samples in the box. So if you want to do an herb garden, you've got a rose garden, you want to do a vegetable garden, you can send them those 3 samples. Much easier to amend your soil before you start putting plants in than after you've already planted things. Then you run the risk of burning your plants and you have to start over. Okay. During the summer, you're going to want to water your herb garden weekly if we don't get any rain. I know here in Louisiana that hardly ever happens, but March has been fairly dry except for the last couple of days. So, do plan to water if we get some periods with no rain. You do not want to fertilize herbs. You don't. What a fertilizer does is a fertilizer encourages growth. And so your herbs are going to grow big and tall and leggy. The reason why your herbs give a good flavor, the reason why they smell so good, is because they have essential oil in the leaves. And if they start putting all of their energy into growth because you've fertilized them, then that essential oil is going to be dispersed through all that new growth. and you're going to be putting herbs into your stews and soups and sauces, and you're going to say, why doesn't it taste good? Why don't it? That's why, because you want a good concentration of essential oil. Herbs are really disease resistant. It is very rare that you have to do anything for any kind of fungus or any kind of disease. But the problem with herbs is that, you know, we think they taste good, and so do all the little critters. As you can see, I've got some bitten off, you know, little leaves right here, bitten off little leaf right there. My philosophy is just plant enough to share, okay? So I don't plant just one basil, because basil seems to be one that they really love. My garden will usually have 2 or 3 plants of maybe 3 different varieties of basil, so that when the little buggers come in and they start chewing on my leaves, I've still got leaves that I can use to cook with. Now, if you grow a vegetable garden, you're already familiar with using a horticultural oil or an insecticidal soap on your vegetables. You can use that on your herbs if pests really become a problem. If it's safe to put on vegetables, it's safe to put on herbs. So if it really, you know, bothers you that you've got these little bitten off places, then, you know, you can go that route. Doesn't bother me. I just go ahead and, you know, like I said, plant enough for everybody. All right, in Louisiana, you're going to want to use a raised bed, whether it's a formal raised bed or an informal raised bed. Now, by informal, that's what I started out with. I found a place in my yard where I thought maybe I could plant some herbs, and I went and bought a couple of bags of my favorite pot and soil and emptied it where I thought it would be good, and stuck the little plants in the ground and said, okay, grow. And they did. They grew, they thrived, they were very happy. So the next spring, I went ahead and bought some edging and bought a garden soil and built it up, and I had a bigger area for my herbs. So you don't have to do a lot beforehand if you just want to experiment a little bit, and if that doesn't work, find someplace else. You can use anything you want. I'm going to show some pictures later of creative ways that different people have made raised beds. Most herbs are going to thrive in containers, and so, feel free to use containers. I always have a container of basil and oregano, and I didn't bring my parsley, but I have a couple of different kinds of parsley. I have rosemary. You can even, you can move them, you can bring them inside when it gets cold, that kind of thing. So they thrive in containers. Some of them, like oregano, different varieties of oregano look great in a hanging basket. I usually have 2 or 3 hanging baskets. This guy actually has a macrame hanger that it hangs in, which is why the pot's a pretty color. And it'll trail. It'll look very pretty. Something like mint, it is very aggressive. So you want to keep it in a pot, unless you want mint everywhere. It's great if you're mowing the grass and you come across a patch of mint and it smells wonderful, that's great, but you really don't want it growing up your roses and, growing in between your petunias and your pansies and whatever. So, some of them you need to contain. And of course, like I said, I bring these guys inside in the winter so that I have my herbs to cook with all winter long. Okay, indoor herbs. I know you want to keep them in your kitchen, which makes sense. Your windowsill in your kitchen is where you want to snip them and have them right close at hand, but you have to think about the fact that the number one thing about growing herbs is they need light. They need 5 to 6 hours of light a day. So you have to just bite the bullet and put them where they're going to get the most light. Okay? You can actually, test during the day with, turn your lights off and make notes if the place where you want to put them, how much light's coming in that window. And notice that, because your herbs are going to want to know that. If you don't have natural light, you can use fluorescent light. You know, all of my little microgreens here, I grew under fluorescent lights. So you can use those. You're going to want to make sure that your pots have drainage holes. Clay pots are the best because herbs don't like wet feet. So clay pots will dry out for you. They're the best. Plastic is second best, but absolutely positively make sure that the water can drain out so you don't have any root rot. Growing herbs inside, you're probably going to want to use drip pans because the air inside the houses with our air conditioning and our heating is very dry. So when the water drains out of your plant, when you water it, it'll collect in that little drip pan. Drip pan is nothing but maybe a little plastic container with a layer of gravel in the bottom. And it'll collect down there and create a little microclimate with a little bit of humidity for your herbs. Water only when needed. This is an indicator for your indoor plants. Okay, just stick your finger in there up to about the second joint, and if it comes out like that, then you've got enough moisture in the ground. Okay, if you've got soil on your finger, you're good. But if it's dry, then it's time to water. What I usually do is just put them all in the kitchen sink and give them a shower with my little spritzer, and then I let them drain for a while and then move them back to where I need to put them. If you notice yellow leaves, you've given them too much water. Back it down because the roots will rot. Temperature, if you're comfortable, your herbs are comfortable. That's the basic flat line there. Okay. If you want your growth nice and straight, be sure to rotate your pots. I've been doing that with these microgreens, even though you can't really tell, but I've been turning them to try to get them to grow straight. Some plants are going to go dormant in winter even if you have them inside. Oregano is a good example of that. It's going to go dormant in winter, and you can see a lot of the dead stuff from last year. All these sprigs, brown, that was all herb last year before it got cold. Once again, make sure they have good air circulation. You can either, with your plants inside, repot them or trim their roots if you want to keep them in the same pot. Now, in order to trim the roots, it's very similar, and when you repot, only go up one pot size. Don't go from something like this to a container this big, because then what your herb is going to do is put out roots, and it's going to put all its energy into roots and roots and roots because it's got space for roots, and you're going to get very little growth up top. To keep it in the same pot, when it's dry enough that you can handle it, you just tip it out of the pot and look at the root structure. If you've got roots growing around, you're going to want to kind of very gently tease those guys down. If you've got roots that are yellow or brown, you're going to want to trim those off. What you're looking for is nice white roots, okay? And then you can just put fresh soil in and repot right in the same container. Mediterranean herbs, the ones, my buddies that I keep talking about, my basil and my oregano, they like a slightly alkaline soil, and you can use eggshells to do that. If you've only got a couple of pots, it only takes one. You rinse the egg out, you smash it, you mix it in a little water, and then you just put a spoonful here and a spoonful there, and when you water, that calcium in there will bleed down into your plant, and it will keep the soil a little alkaline. If you're harvesting from potted plants regularly, you can add a little fertilizer, but very little, quarter strength, once a month. And whatever you do, be consistent. If you find something that works, keep doing it. All right, microgreens, that's what these guys are. This is something that has been in culinary circles for a couple of years now. Microgreens are very similar to sprouts, if any of you have ever used sprouts. The difference is sprouts sprout in water, and microgreens you put in soil. Really easy, see if I can pick one up here. I have a little layer of gravel on the bottom and some soil, and this is just a soup container that the lid broke off of, so I was using it for my plants. You get good quality seeds. You don't want seeds with any kind of fungicides or anything on them, and just sprinkle some on and put a little layer of soil on the top, and then you spritz it. You get a sprayer and you just spray it, because remember, you don't want them to drown. So you spray them, a couple of weeks, you're going to get nice little microgreens. These are used, first of all, they are very nutritious, because what you're using is the little cotyledons, the little leaves at the very beginning, which have all the nutrient from the seed in them. Okay? And what you do is you just take that and snip it off, and you use it basically as a garnish. You put it in salads. This is basil. I can cut those off and sprinkle them on tomato soup, or sprinkle them on top of spaghetti or whatever I want to use. These guys, this is my cilantro, and trust me, it tastes like cilantro. So over the summer when I can't grow my cilantro, I can just keep seeding these and get enough to use in a salsa or in any kind of, my fish tacos or whatever I want. Okay. Oh, voila, the pictures that show you some creative ideas, ways that you can use your gardening. These are some for indoors. I absolutely love that. Get me some old wine glasses, some old wine bottles, and do that. All right, as you do your research, you're going to come across, herb spice, which is which. It's really kind of a gray area. Herbs are generally thought of as anything where you use the leaves for whatever purposes, to flavor or for medicinal purposes or for whatever. Spices we usually think of as using the woody part of the plant. So the stems, the seed pods, the seeds, cinnamon, the bark, something like that. So basically what you're seeing here is what we would call a lot of herbs, because we use, the leaves on these herbs. But like I said, there's a gray area, because for example, rosemary. Rosemary grows on a very woody stem. Rosemary can get huge if you have the right size container. If I'm using the leaves off of the rosemary to flavor a soup, I'm using an herb. But if I take a branch off of my rosemary, which is one of the things y'all have in your recipes that we do, and I strip the leaves off and I use it to skewer some shrimp or some little chunks of chicken to put on the barbecue pit, I've used the woody part, so it's a spice. So when you're doing your research, you may kind of, see them float back and forth between herb and spice, and that's okay, because it really is kind of a blurred line. Another term you're going to see is grass. Grass stands for generally regarded as safe, okay? And this is a designation that the Herb Society has come up with. And that designation basically tells you if this is an herb that the general public eats all the time, never bothers anybody, they're good with it, so you can feel really safe using it in anything that you would cook for any of your friends coming over for dinner. Non-grass doesn't mean that you can't eat it, it just means that some people do react to it. Some people will have digestive problems if they eat it. So it's a designation that I think is good to know, but it's not something, that you necessarily have to worry about too much. The best example I can give you of a non-grass, I love growing pineapple sage. The pineapple sage in my garden will get this tall with big spikes of red flowers, It's beautiful. And the leaves actually do have a pineapple flavor. So one of the recipes y'all have is for frozen yogurt. And I use my pineapple sage. You can use mint, you can use lemon balm, you can use any flavor you want. But I like using my pineapple sage, and my family likes it. I would not serve it if I had, you know, like a group of friends over for dinner, or, you know, the grandkids brought all their buddies and I passed it out to all the little guys. I wouldn't do that. I would use something safe like mint. But for my family, we like it. Nobody's ever complained about it, so I use it. So that's the designation there with grass and non-grass. Okay, you also have in your packet a really detailed listing of fall herbs and spring herbs that was put together by one of our master gardeners many years ago, and it's wonderful. For me, I find that these are the ones that grow best in the fall in my garden. Okay? Now, this baby right here, cilantro. If you like cilantro and you like to do Tex-Mex cooking, you like to make that salsa, you want your cilantro during the summer when you're making salsas with all those tomatoes you're pulling out of your vegetable garden. Well, the problem is, if you would plant a cilantro plant right now, it would probably last maybe the next 6 weeks or so, but the first time the heat hits it, come mid-May, it's going to bolt. Y'all know what bolt means? It means it grows that big stalk of seeds, flowers, and then seeds, and that's it. It's gone. It's lived its life. It's done. So either you can do like I'm going to do this summer and grow your little microgreens, or you can grow it in the the fall, winter, harvest it, put it in your freezer, preserve it so that you can use it out of your freezer all summer long. But it's just not going to grow for you for very long in the summer. Lettuce, arugula and lettuce, they will survive a light freeze. So even if it freezes, you will still be able to, if you've got a big container with all your, different types of lettuce in it, you'll still be able to make a salad. All right, these are the ones that I generally grow in the spring, except for that lemongrass. I have to put it way over there. And as I said, do be aware, something like mint, you definitely want to put, in a container. Something like oregano will look pretty in a basket. So a lot of these herbs that you plant in the spring are going to grow all the way until the fall. And some of them will even survive a light freeze. So you plant these now, and you're going to have them for, another 6 months probably. That's a good thing. Okay. You also have a page in your handout about growing herbs indoors. So I'm not going to go over this too much. Basically, easy, challenging, hard. So, any of these that you were looking at growing in your house, you might want to jot it down if it's one that's going to be challenging for you. Okay? All right, here we go. Harvesting and preserving herbs. First of all, you want to harvest your herbs. Okay, thank you, Carol. You want to harvest your herbs after the dew is dry, but in the cool part of the day, so like mid-morning or late afternoon in the summer. Okay? For most herbs, the leaf is what you're going to use. That's where you're going to have your most concentrated flavor. But do be aware that the flowers of herbs can be used as a garnish, and they have a very concentrated pop of flavor. So, for example, I always let at least one of my basil plants flower so that I can use that. I think the recipe is in there. I cook some pasta, I add a little olive oil, I add a little Parmesan, I throw some of the flowers in, instant pesto. So, you roll with what you got with these guys. If you harvest a lot, you're going to get more growth, okay? So if you want more basil, when you start to see those little flower stalks coming up, deadhead them, pinch them off, Same thing with any of the herbs. Pinch it off so that you can get more growth. And anytime you cut your herbs back, cut them back, you're going to get more growth. So don't be afraid to harvest. All right, these are the best ways to use those herbs. I usually keep a glass full of mint and lemon balm or lemon verbena in my fridge all summer long. And we stick it in our glass when we drink water, we use it with tea. You know, they'll keep in the fridge for a few days, okay? You can dry your herbs. If you do it, don't set them out in the middle of the yard where they're going to get a lot of sunlight. Do it inside. I dry mine in my laundry room, so someplace out of direct sunlight where it's going to be, you know, more dry, more temperate kind of conditions. You can take herbs and just stick them in a Ziploc bag and stick them in your freezer. And you can use them like that. They will, you know, they will dry like that. A lot of times basil and oregano, things like that, I'll dry them in, freeze them in an ice cube tray. I'll put like a teaspoon of my herb with a tablespoon of water in an ice cube container, and then just pop the ice cubes out, and I can just put that ice cube in my sauce or my soup or whatever I'm cooking to get the flavor. I do give you simple syrup recipes. I give you recipes for oils and butters that I use. Please, if you make an oil, do let it steep for a couple of days and then filter out the herbs. Otherwise, you're going to end up with bacterial growth, and we don't want anybody getting sick. The other thing that I want to say about drying herbs is that some herbs have very different flavors when you use them fresh as when you use them dried. And if you've never used fresh herbs, you may not know that. You may not have even thought about it. But for example, oregano, when you read some of the recipes where I use oregano, you're going to say, ugh. Oregano, when it's fresh, is very sweet. And so, you know, if you're going to use it for sweet instead of savory, you want it fresh. Bay leaf is sweet when it's fresh off the tree. It only has that savory flavor after it's been dried. So, you know, do realize that a lot of herbs are going to change character when you dry them. All right. I'm sorry, did I not even have that one up while I was talking? I'm sorry. Y'all are looking at me like, you know, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay? All right. All right. The recipes in your handout are recipes that I use all the time. The really wonderful thing about herbs is it's wide open. Whatever your family enjoys, whatever you enjoy cooking, experiment, go with it, it's wide open. You've got some little basics there, roll with it. Okay? Finally, please remember, 5 to 6 hours of sunlight, good drainage, fall and spring herbs, harvest them in the cool part of the day, preserve them, use them, enjoy them. And then I do give you some references here, briefly, all of the Herb Society information. All recipes, this website, which I'm sure many of you here are familiar with, the recipes are actually listed by herb. So if you find that you have an overabundance of a particular herb because your garden is just the perfect spot to grow that, then, you know, you can find ways to use it. Red Stick Spice Company, if you go on their website, you can buy just a teaspoon of an herb or a tablespoon of it to try it to see if you like it before you grow it. And then growing plants inside, I like Burpee, but there's all kinds of other places you can go. Okay, and that's it. This is our ag agent. If any of you are interested, that'll stay up for a couple of minutes if any of you are interested in joining our crazy bunch of master gardeners. And what we'll do is take a little break. The restrooms are right across there. If anybody needs a restroom break, anybody wants to come up and taste or smell, or, you know, I have no problem with you pulling out my microgreens to try them, come on up and enjoy. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and get started with our second program for this evening. Carol Paine, my buddy, is a retired teacher of 35 years. She taught in middle school and high school. She became an avid gardener when she and her husband purchased their first home. And it had wonderful gardens, and rather than watch all that beautiful garden die, she went ahead and learned how to take care of all of her, camellias and roses and all the beautiful stuff she had in there. Now it's one of her greatest joys in life to play in the dirt, and she loves to have her own flowers fill her home with beauty. Okay, so please welcome Carol. She's going to present Lilies, to be or not to be.
Now, I have to give Nancy credit, because if it weren't for her, I would not be a master gardener. She came and asked me one day, we've known each other for a long time, and she asked me if I'd be interested in becoming a master gardener. And I thought about it for a long time, but no one had ever given me the little stimulus, a little push. And so we went and we took the class together and loved it and had a great time. But the thing you'll learn about if you become a master gardener, people think you know everything there is to know about plants. Well, when you become a master gardener, you learn how much you don't know about plants. To give you an example, all right, today I'm presenting this on lilies. And when I volunteered to do lilies, I said, man, I've raised lilies for years and years and years. Canna Lilies and Calla Lilies and Daylilies. And guess what? They're not lilies. Okay? So today, that's part of what we're going to do. We're going to learn a little bit about lilies. To be or not to be, that is the question. Oh, come on, y'all study Shakespeare, huh? All right. So, what we're going to learn today, what the purpose is we're going to learn what makes a lily, investigate the characteristics of lilies, identify several true lilies, identify the fakes, and learn why they're not true lilies. To get down, now I taught science forever, okay? So the real trick is in the scientific classification. You all know what kingdom they belong to, right? Plant kingdom, but duh, all right. But then, and actually since I retired from teaching 11 years ago, all this classification has changed. And I think all the DNA sequencing is what has caused it to change. There's a subkingdom now that's called Tracheobionta, used to be called Tracheophyta, and it means they're vascular plants, which means they have tubes that transport the water up from the roots to the leaves, and the phloem that transports the food down to the roots from the leaves. Their superdivision is Spermatophyta, and that means they're a seed plant. Their division is the angiosperms. They make flowers. The class, they're monocotyledons, and I'll explain more about that in a little bit because that's what confuses people. They have one seed leaf, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Their order is Liliaceae. That sounds like lilies, right? And their family is Liliaceae. Well, that's for sure the lilies, right? This is where we get to the lilies. They have to belong to the genus Lilium or they're not true lilies. And there are over 90 different species of lilies. The class of monocots, what it means to be a monocot is it has a single cotyledon. That is like in a kernel of corn. You know, if you take the seed coat off the kernel of corn, it doesn't fall apart, does it? It's just one little kernel of corn. When I taught kids this, they used to love it. I'd bring in a cob of fresh corn and cut it out and give them each a kernel of corn, and you get to squeeze it and the little baby embryo pops out of the kernel. And they thought it was really cool, and then they'd eat the kernel of corn afterwards. They ate everything. All right? They also have parallel veins in the leaf. If you see, this is one of the lily leaves, and if you look at the veins, they all go parallel. They don't branch out at all. Well, that's if you can tell, that's where you can tell it's a monocot. The flower parts are always in multiples of threes. Could be 3, 6, 12, 9, whatever. And frequently they have only one pistil. But it'll be 3 sepals, 3 petals, 3 stamen or 6 stamen or whatever. They start off with the taproot, which is replaced by a fibrous root. Other examples are grass, corn, orchids, bamboo, sugar, rice, you name it. There are lots and lots of monocots. They're very, very common plants. Now this is the order Daylilies. Now do these look like lilies? The century plant, aloe, yam, and the yam is not a sweet potato. I went to look that up. I said, yam is a monocot? It's not a sweet potato. It's very different from a sweet potato. Poppies, the iris family, and actually in the iris family, that's where the gladiolus fits too. There's the lily family, Liliaceae. Okay, we're getting closer. The spiderworts, water hyacinth, those nasty things that are taking over all the bayous. All right, smilax, batflower, or arrowroot. Now the family Liliaceae, we think if they're in our family, that means they're just like us, right? Well, our family as humans is Humanidae, right? Our genus and species is Homo sapien, everybody knows that, right? Well, our family is Hominidae, but our family with us is all the apes and gorillas and chimpanzees. Are they all human? No. Just like all the ones in the family Liliaceae are not lilies. Because you see, you've got onions and garlic, and would you call that a lily? No. All right, they've got some characteristics similar to lilies because they're all monocots and they all have many characteristics similar, but they're not lilies. Now, what makes a lily is it has to belong to the genus Lilium. And the Greek symbol, it's a symbol for the goddess Hera, and it represents purity and innocence. In fact, you'll see an awful lot of saints that are carrying lilies to show how pure and innocent and humble they were. Some look straight up, some look straight out at you, like these do, and some droop. Many require a chilling period in order to bloom, but the really big difference you'll find in the lily bulbs is they have white or yellow fleshy scales. And that's what lily bulbs look like. Now I have some right here. If you want to look, this one is so colored in mud you can hardly see it, but that looks almost like a garlic, doesn't it? But if you look at these bulbs, you can see there are lots of little scales that come up. Now to get to the true lilies, this is the wild lily. It's usually called a tiger lily. All right, and they grow in the wild. They come in orange or yellow, slightly recurved petals. They're 2 to 4 feet tall. The stalk produces between 5 to 20 blooms on a stalk. They're shade tolerant. They're great additions to woodland gardens and moist meadows. Now, I don't know if you like to feed your deer and rabbits. Most gardeners aren't really crazy about that, but some people do, all right? So these are great for deer and rabbits. The next one coming up, Easter lilies. These are a true lily too, all right? They have several different cultivars. They're white, and they look at you like these do. They grow 1 to 3 feet in height. They can be forced to bloom out of season. That's why they make such a great Easter plant, because you can make them bloom when you want them to. And they're slightly fragrant, and they're very hardy. In fact, my hairdresser last week was so excited because she said our Easter lilies are coming back up again, even after the freeze and all. The Martagon, our hybrid lily, is known as a Turk's cap. A lot like those wild lilies did. They dangle gracefully from the end of the stem. Each stem produces a dozen or more blooms. They could be orange, yellow, red, and pink. The stalks grow up to 6 feet tall. Some have spotted petals while others do not, and they are very fragrant. I don't think I've ever seen those. I haven't grown them anyway. I've grown a lot of these. This is the trumpet lily. These are real popular in Baton Rouge, although they got a bad name because kids were doing naughty things with them. Okay, this one's called the African Queen, and that one is just a plain trumpet lily. They're colorful flowers, long-lasting and highly fragrant, no spots or petals. The leaves are broad. They may have a dozen or more buds per stem, while others have only a few. They come in shades of white, yellow, orange, cream, and pink, often with a star-shaped throat and a contrasting color, and they can grow 8 feet tall. I think mine are dead. I'm going to have to replace them. I don't think they made it.
Is that a Stargazer lily?
That's a trumpet lily, yes.
What's a Stargazer?
Pardon?
Stargazer.
No, it's not a Stargazer. We're coming to the Stargazer. Asiatic hybrid lilies. This one on the bottom is called Forever Susan, and that one over there is called Tango. Now, if you're an LSU fan, that's a purple and gold one, okay? It's called a Stracciatella event, and it's actually purple and gold. So I know a lot of people like to put purple and gold in their gardens. The Asiatic hybrids are bred from several different species. They have 3 to 6 flowers per stem. The petals are often spotted. They do not have a fragrance. They're smaller than other types of lilies. Lots of different colors, including the orange, red, yellow, and creamy white. They're a favorite of deer and rabbits. Strong, straight stems that seldom need staking, and they're wonderful, long-lasting cut flowers. The next are Candidum hybrid lilies. Madonna is the white one up at the top. This one's yellow, and over there is the pink Candidum. And they bloom late spring to early summer. They're an excellent border plant. They're well suited to containers, 3 to 6 feet tall. They're toxic to cats, but not dogs or other animals, not humans too. Now the St. Joseph lily right here, this is a Candidum hybrid. It blooms for St. Joseph's Day all the time. I really thought mine had a setback because of the freeze a couple of weeks ago, but sure enough, they came up to smile for St. Joseph. That's what these are. And these are out of my yard. I picked them this afternoon. And when I picked them, you know what they did? They started drooping immediately before I put them in water, to get them in water really quick, because I mean, it was a tremendous change. See, those two are still drooping a little bit, because they do look right out at you. And they are so easy to grow. This is an American hybrid lily, and that's called the Panther Lily. You know, we had the tiger lily and all those, but it's a cross between the Oriental hybrid and a trumpet. The blooms have a shallow trumpet shape before they fully open into a broad bloom. So they start off like this, and then they open all the way up. They 6 to 10 inches across. 10 inches is a big lily. Pink, yellow, orange, and white. They're outward-facing flowers. They're heavily scented, 2 to 3 feet in height, and they're excellent cut flowers. This is the Oriental hybrid liver, and this is the Stargazer that you were talking about. Now, that's Casablanca over there. I became obsessed with lilies. I became interested in lilies when I was planning my wedding. You say, huh? Well, the florist insisted that what my bridesmaids had to carry was rubrum lilies. I had no idea what any lily was. I mean, I was very young at the time, okay? And this is a rubrum lily. And it was gorgeous. My bridesmaids all wore pink dresses, and the lilies just really made quite a show off then. And I've tried growing them a couple of times, and I've killed them a lot of times. Oop, went too fast. Okay. Interdivisional hybrid lilies, that's the purple marble, and then the Easter dazzle, and that's Zeba over there. And one of the neat things when I was putting this together, got an email from Breck Bulbs, and they were telling me about how they had produced a black lily, totally black. Isn't that gorgeous? It's called Night Rider, a truly black, I mean, you talk about a standout in your garden, huh? Interdivisional hybrid lilies are a combination of Asiatic lilies and Easter-type lilies. They're a showgirl cousin of plain Asiatic lilies, but bigger, bolder, and sexier. A wide range of intense colors, no fragrance. They make great cut flowers. They bloom for weeks. They're real garden standouts. And the blooms measure about 7 inches across, and they grow up about 4 feet tall. Now, growing lilies. If you're going to plant lilies, now remember, the bulbs are all going to be those things that look like a garlic, right, that have all those different things on them. Plant in well-drained garden soil, the bulbs will rot if the location is too waterlogged. They don't like their feet wet either. It says 6 to 8 hours of full sun. Then make sure the root disc is facing down. Now, it's really easy to tell where the roots are. See? They're on the bottom there, okay? And the little pointy top is the stem part. So make sure you don't point them. I've had people who planted things upside down and wondered why they didn't come up. Okay, put the roots down, stems up. All right, not hard to figure out. Plant the bulbs so their tops sit 3 inches beneath the surface of the soil. That's very different from a lot of other bulbs we plant. These want to be fairly deep down in the soil. covered by 3 inches of soil. Then you put mulch on top of that. You water it all in. And some do well in tropical climates, some don't do, because some lilies actually need a chilling period in order to produce flowers. Now, what about these non-lily lilies? True lilies are in the genus Lilium, and they grow from bulbs with fleshy scales. Some other common plants, such as Daylilies and Canna Lilies and Calla Lilies and water lilies, have the term lily in their common name, but they're not actually lilies at all. They may grow from tubers or bulbs, but they're in a different plant genus. Each true lily bulb is made of layered scales. I've said that several times, huh? The flower stalk is produced from the center of the bulb, and the roots emerge from a disc found on the bottom of the bulb. The first one we'll talk about, wait, went the wrong way, excuse me. Calla lilies. I love calla lilies. They've got 2 kinds here. Here's a yellow calla, and if you want to look at its bulb, it does not have scales at all. And this is a black calla lily. I said, that is going to be dynamite, isn't it? All right, these I found at Clegg's just the other day when I went looking for some bulbs to show y'all. All right, they come, they're the arum family, not even the lily family. Then the genus Xanthodeschia, 6 different species. They hail from South Africa, prefer full sun, partial shade, and rich, moist, well-drained soil, perennials in warmer climates. And I apologize, the pollen in the air has got my sinuses working good today. This is what a Calla Lily bulb looks like. See, well, that's not exactly what those look like, but anyway. Then there's an Amaryllis. We know these at Christmas time, right? We're very familiar with these because they come in lots of Christmassy colors, and they're easy to forest too. They're of the genus Hypaeostrum. There are about 90 species, over 600 hybrids from those species. They have a large fleshy bulbs that should not be completely buried, and that's different. You leave the top of that bulb sticking out of the ground. They have tall, broad leaves, generally evergreen, large red, white, pink, multicolored flowers. They're native South America and the Caribbean, and they love Louisiana. They will multiply and multiply in your garden. That's an Amaryllis bulb. I bet we've all seen those before. Again, roots down, stems up. Spider lilies. They're not lilies either, okay? Shucks. They're another really popular lily in the area, though. They're also called resurrection lily, surprise lily, or the naked lady, because they come up out of the ground out of absolutely nowhere when you're not expecting them before any leaves or anything else. Their genus and species is Lycoris squamigera. They're from the Amaryllis family. They're native of Japan or China, and they bloom in the late summer or fall. Usually we get them around October. And they really are bright lights, aren't they? I love those. This is what their bulbs look like. Canna lilies. I've grown lots of these too. I've killed several, okay. All right, they're also known as arrowroot. Now, we had that in the lily family a little while ago. They're a tall, leafy, tropical plant with gladiolus-like flower spikes. They're sheathed in large, paddle-shaped leaves. Their genus is Canna. There are about 10 species. They range from 1.5 feet to 8 feet tall. They do get really tall. Some colors include red, orange, pink, yellow, cream, or some multicolored. And the foliage can be gorgeous, can be lots of different shades of green, and it also can be bronze or striped and variegated. They have a problem with disease, though, and that's why some of mine have died. That they can get aster yellows, bud rot, rust, and mosaic virus, and lots of things like to eat on them. Rabbits, Japanese beetles, caterpillars, slugs, snails, and in fact, if you look in the canna, that's what I found, all kinds of critters in the canna lilies, which destroyed them. This is what a canna lily rhizome looked like. A rhizome is just an underground stem. Ginger lilies. We all have those, don't we? They're also known as butterfly lilies, aren't they? Hedycrium coronarius. They grow from rhizomes. They're in the ginger family. They're very fragrant. They make excellent cut flowers. I mean, they will fill a room with fragrance. They're so odoriferous. They naturalize easily in the South. In fact, they'll take over. They have sword-shaped leaves. And that's what their rhizomes look like. In fact, if you go to the grocery to buy ginger, that's what you'll find. It's the root of the ginger plant. Daylilies. I bet everybody's grown daylilies, right? Not lilies. Nope. Lots of variety. I mean, I could probably put 100 different pictures of daylilies. There's so many of them. Of the genus Hemerocallis, they grow to 1 to 3 feet tall. The reason they're called daylilies is the flowers only last one day. The flowers can be 3 to 15 inches across. I've never seen a 15-inch daylily. Have you? No, but that's what the references told me. They're toxic to cats, again, but not dogs or humans. Heat and cold tolerant, yeah, they survive the freeze. They're doing great. And they grow from tubers, not bulbs, and that's what the tubers look like. Water lilies. Well, for sure those are lilies, right? No, they're not lilies at all. In fact, they're not even close to lilies. They're from a different family entirely. The family Nymphaceae, I'm really testing my Latin. Nymphaceae, a 58 species in 6 different genuses or genera, native to the temperate and tropical parts of the world, rounded, variously notched, waxy coated leaves on long stalks, and they float in quiet freshwater habitats. The stalks arise from thick, fleshy, creeping underwater rhizomes that are buried in the mud. Showy, fragrant, solitary flowers. They come in many colors. These are not a water hyacinth. Okay, this is not the same thing at all as a water hyacinth. These are not the things that are going to clog up all the waterways and everything. In fact, one of the things they said about this is you could get an old sugar kettle and put it out in your yard and put some water lilies in it, and they would really be a phenomenal accent in your yard because they are so pretty. That's what their rhizomes look like. Prunes, don't they? Plums, yeah. Prunes, that's what I'm thinking of, yeah. Now, these are the places where I got a lot of my information from, okay? Now, if y'all have any questions for me, okay? I went through that quickly. All right, if y'all got any questions that we could go through? Yes, ma'am. Fertilize them. I don't even fertilize them. I have put them in the ground and let them go. I'm sure, we see like these. Are there insects or pests that disturb them? Not the true lilies, okay? The Canna Lilies have got a problem with bugs. All right, a lot of them have problems with the deer or the rabbits eating them. But other than that, they're really disease resistant. They're really good about that. Okay, fertilizing probably won't hurt them at all, but I've never really had to fertilize them. Okay, any other questions? And they're the easy, and it is time to plant them right now. You want to go buy some lilies and plant them? I mean, yeah, it's a good time to do it. And they, like I said, I picked these up at Clegg's last week, and there are lots of choices and varieties that you can get. Yes.
Do they come back year after year?
Yes. Okay. And some of them will multiply like crazy.
Because I have some that it seems like I don't know if they're lilies or look like lilies, but they bloom and then that's it.
Well, and they may be lilies that have to have the chilling period, okay? Because that's
they were there when I moved in. So
okay.
You know, but I noticed that they'll bloom and then that's it for the year.
Well, they'll only bloom one time a year. They don't recurringly bloom. No, they have one time that they will be blooming,
okay.
And they're done. But if they come back year after year,
they bloom and then it's just a bush after that.
right?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And leave the leaves up there because the leaves are nourishing the bulbs down below. Yes, ma'am.
Calla Lily, and I thought that all that ice was going to kill them. They're coming back.
They're good.
They're hardy.
Carol, can you repeat what the audience is saying so that our
Yes.
virtual audience knows what they're asking?
All right. Nancy was saying she has 2 varieties of Calla Lilies that have both come back, that they have been survived the freeze and all. And a lot of the lilies have, yes.
On all of these lilies, you want a little bit of the bulb to be exposed?
Now, it depends. If it's a true lily, it wants to be 3 inches below the ground, okay? If it's something like an amaryllis, it wants the top of the bulb sticking out. So when you get your bulbs, read what it says to do here, okay? It says dig a hole to the retired, place a rise inside, cover with soil and water. It doesn't say how deep to plant it, Should. Okay? But these are Calla Lilies, and the Calla Lilies have done great. Yeah, I've got Calla Lilies coming back too, yes, I do. I don't have cannas anymore, they all died. The butterfly lilies are doing great too. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I have lilies that has been in my yard for a while, for years, and other grasses are growing in the middle of them.
What?
And I would like to dig them up, take the grasses out that I don't want, and then replant them. Can I do that at this time and still expect blooms?
What they recommend you do is to get a fork-like shovel, you know, the big tall things that has a fork on the end of it, and go deep down and pull those up. It's probably early enough that you could be able to do that. Or you can just hand weed. Right?
Okay.
It's
when
not
I
as
put
much
them back
fun.
in, do I need to put any root stock or anything in there?
No.
Okay.
Just plant them back. They're pretty tough. Yes.
I know you said you don't fertilize, but.
I don't fertilize. Could you fertilize? Yes, you could.
Okay, quickly though, my grandmother had a green thumb, but she also lived on a farm and had lots of chickens.
Chickens do good things for all plants.
Yes, and so my aunt came over one day because she lived next door and said, you know, can I take some of your Easter lilies? They're so beautiful, you know, it's a cluster of them. And then she started counting the blooms on the plants. And she actually called the newspaper. It averaged between 25 and 75 blooms on each plant.
And that's probably because of the
I would
chickens.
say, I would say some natural fertilizer might enhance your
that's
lilies.
right. Okay, it surely wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
All right, but like I said, these I have never fertilized. Somebody gave a whole bunch of these to me. I mean, I've got, probably 30 of these blooming right now, or coming up.
I'll go with my scissors.
No, some of them are still just really tight buds, and some of them are not quite as pretty as they are now. You've got a variety, yeah. But they're all in a tight little cluster, and they're doing great, like the picture I showed you there. And they really are easy to take care of. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you know where you can buy spider lilies?
Spider lilies at most of the nurseries will have them. If they don't, you could go online and pick them up at places like Breakfast Bulbs has a lot of those kind of things. If you Google spider lilies, you will find 15 places because the people that spell them will come up first. All right. So, spider lilies you can plant right now. Okay. Almost all the lily bulbs, it's good to plant now.
Even pseudo lilies.
Even the pseudo lilies. Yeah. All right. Okay. Any other questions? We have a few minutes left. Well, thank you very much. If you want to come and look at these bulbs, come on up and check them out and see how these are really, well, they had those oriental lilies in a lot of dirt in there. But you can come and look at them and see what they look like. They're pretty interesting bulbs. Very different from the Calla Lilies to the real lilies. Thank you. Oh, and this is our good friend Russell Harris, our county agent, except he's a parish agent, okay? He has just come on the program, and he's very knowledgeable if you have questions. He's not on my handout. Is he on yours? No, write his number and all down. Yes, ma'am.
Are they going to offer a Master Gardener program this year?
Yes. He's the man to contact if you're interested in it. Like I said, it's the most fun you ever want to do. Okay, it is really a hoot.
Lots of fun people.
Is it going to be
Great people.
or online this year?
Pardon?
In person this year or online?
This is the first in-person class we're doing. Now, are they going to do the class in person? They hope to.
Oh, good.
But you know, a lot of it's out of our control as to what they let us do. They did the one last this past summer, partly in person and partly online. They did get together for some labs and stuff like that.
They are starting to allow small groups back at Burden. It's usually held at Burden Conference Center. So my guess is maybe by the summer, which is when it's usually held, they'll be.
Is that the Monday morning one, the first Monday of the month?
No.
That's the Burden Friday lunch thing. No, we're talking about the Master Gardener Program.
That's the Friends of Burden that meet the first Monday of every month. All right.
This one at the library?
No. She asked about the Master Gardener Program. The Master Gardener Program is actually, it's a master's level learning program that you go through.
It's
LSU Ag Center professors teach the course.
It's a 6 weeks course that you
Right.
take, okay, and you end up with a book of information this big, okay, and I mean it covers everything you ever wanted to know, and some things you didn't want to know, but anyway, it covers everything there is about plants. Really does. Lots of information. All right, any other questions? Like I said, you will, being a master gardener is really fun. I never thought it would be such a great fun, yeah. And they don't make you go weed gardens, okay?
No, you don't have to. We do not weed gardens.
Some people do, but okay. Except my own garden's okay.
Please be sure to finish your little evaluation forms and hand them to me before you leave. That's, like I said, how we get better, how we learn to do. Thank you.
Thank y'all. Y'all are a great audience.